The Jester Radio Podcast.
Jester Radio, another episode, another guest, another inspirational, motivational human being. So, the White Knight, as formerly known in the UK. Matthew, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, cheers, Jesse. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for the time.
So you are obviously a football player. Football, soccer, what do you prefer to call it? Obviously, you played in different areas where they call it different things.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a traditionalist, so I prefer football. Soccer is kind of an American term, even though it originated in the UK itself. But I prefer football. Yeah, more of a traditionalist.
Okay, and you obviously now are retired.
Yeah, so I retired in 2014. I had almost a 20-year career professionally, but I've been playing football since I was 5 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up?
In a place called Fish Hoek in Cape Town. It's on the peninsula, just over the mountain, a stuck away. So I played football for the local club, Fish Hoek AFC, from when I was 5 until 17. But at school, I would also play rugby, cricket, you name it, anything with the ball. I loved playing sport. Yeah, more so than being in the classroom.
Yeah, no, I think that's a lot of professional sportsmen's mindset is, but also that's not everyone needs to be in a classroom. Not everyone, gets stimulation from that. So, I mean, it's professional sports, men in general and women obviously, or, sat in class thinking about, going out and playing their sport. So you played in South Africa and you also played, it was in Russia and in the UK.
Yeah. So I started out at Cape Town Spurs in 1994, and then I had about 3 or 4 good seasons with them. Moved up to Johannesburg. A lot of us, very similar to any other industry, we kind of have to move up to Gauteng to make a bit of money, which is what I ended up doing in 1999. I moved up to Mamelodi Sundowns, stayed 3 seasons, then went to Russia for 6 years. I had a number of trials and opportunities to go and play in England or Spain or whatever, but it never quite worked out. So I ended up realizing that, if I want to maximize my career and make euros and dollars, I've got to take the opportunity to go to Russia, spend six seasons there, and then return to South Africa.
Okay, and so the nickname the White Knight, how does that originate? What does it originate from?
There was a lot of attention 2009, 2010 on South Africa. I happened at that stage to be the only white player in the squad. And that was just a coincidence, really. Generally, South African football has represented our demographic, If you look at today's squad, there's probably about 4 or 5 white players in the team, So at that stage, I just happened to be the only one. And of course, journalists being journalists, they like to sensationalize. Yeah. And especially when it comes to South Africa, colour is a huge issue.
Yeah,
our
definitely.
past is a huge issue, and that's what they nicknamed me. One of the publications, So it was a bit cheesy. I felt a little bit uncomfortable about it, but you can't dictate to journalists on what they can and cannot write. So
I think maybe also because you're obviously being a defender, maybe the White Knight is going to play on the fact that you defend and obviously protect, and then also obviously the colour aspect. How have you, in your experience, how has, how everyone thought, he's the only white player, because they probably thought, South Africa needs at least one white player. How did you try and, did South Africa do anything to show that, you were there on merit, you weren't just there to, show face and to show that you can have a white South African?
I don't think South African football has really needed to do that. If you look at our history, the South African football industry has always been quite progressive. Even back in 1969, Orlando Pirates, a black team, and Highlands Park, a white team, attempted to play the first friendly game in Swaziland. In 1972, there was an attempt to have a multiracial league. So we've always been quite progressive in that way. A lot of coaches and ex-players, white players, used to get smuggled into the townships in the 1980s. And there's a lot of interesting stories in that regard. So And if you go down to any well-established amateur club on a Tuesday or Thursday during the week, you'll see a range of color and class, especially at junior level, playing together. What does happen is, though, when kids get to 15 and 16, we lose a lot of kids, especially if they come from middle class and upper class backgrounds, because they have many different distractions. You know?
Yeah.
Whereas the kids from your lower class or lower LSMs kind of are more hungry and don't have a number of distractions. And so those are the ones that end up becoming professional. And of course, you know the dynamics in South Africa as to where class and color stand.
Yes.
But the more colored and black kids become middle class and upper class, we also lose them.
Yes.
We're also losing
So
them.
you're not losing them because they're white, you're losing them
Exactly.
because of the distractions.
Yeah, and the class, the family background that they come from. For example, if like my two boys, they've grown up in a golf estate, you know, it's a constant struggle for me to get them to be hungry and to attain that drive.
Yeah. But I mean, your wife is someone of color as well.
Yeah.
So it's not the fact, it's the distractions, it's not the color of the children that dictate their soccer skills.
Absolutely, and we take them back to, my wife is from Soweto, we take them to Soweto so that we try and give them that balance, you know. But that's the problem for any parent, middle class, upper class, to get that hunger. For example, Kaká from Brazil, from my generation, he was probably the only middle class or wealthy kid that grew up, you know, within a wealthy family that actually made it as a professional. When you talk about Brazilians, and that in itself says a lot about the struggle that a middle class or upper class kid has to actually make it. You know, it's all a mental thing, and drive is all important too.
In South Africa, obviously, there needs to be, because as you say, the upper class people have the ability to be able to, you know, I don't know, if you just want to move your phone there. That should be fine. Yeah, that's perfect. So in South Africa, there's a lot of, you know, if you look at your upper class people, they are exposed to facilities. They are able to, you know, get the top level coaches because those top level coaches are being paid properly. In South Africa, obviously, there's been a lot of, you know, trying to improve the skills and, you know, expose those people in the lower class to be able to, you know, hone their skills and to see, because there's tons of, you know, skillful people that might not be exposed to it. As South Africa, and obviously you've experienced it, gone and tried to get those people, and obviously those kids, starting out as kids, how has South Africa done to obviously try and improve that?
Well, I think South African politicians from the 90s, I mean, we're talking post-apartheid. Obviously, there were huge issues before. But post-apartheid, they didn't get it right. And politicians generally love quick fixes. I get the feeling that they want to be there for the glory when they're in that position. But sports development, just like education, it's a long game. You got to plan long term. And there are no quick fixes for sports development. It's a 10, 15, 20-year plan. And the first thing that they should have done was give kids from your disadvantaged backgrounds and areas the opportunity to shine. And that means giving them the facilities, building capacity management to manage those facilities, to give them organized programs, and to be coached by knowledgeable people. And I got the feeling that was going to be too much work for our politicians, you know. Politicians weren't willing to roll up their sleeves and do that, and so they instituted quick fixes. And even today, we are still talking about issues that we shouldn't be talking about. For example, in cricket, a wealth of black cricketers come from the border area. If you go there now, there's absolutely nothing happening, you know. And the same can be said for football. and football is our number one sport, you would have thought that it was easy.
Yeah.
We don't need bats and pads and expensive equipment.
Just need a ball.
You just need a ball. And so we as an industry have got even more to answer for. And we've become, I think, a little bit relaxed in that regard, expecting natural talent to come to the fore. But we've actually got to create centers of excellence all around the country. We can't just wait for the kids to arrive in Johannesburg. It's not fair.
How was your experience of the World Cup, and how was it? Because obviously we were in the audience, in the stands, whatever, watching it, and in South Africa there was immense pride as South Africans to be hosting the World Cup. Obviously you must have experienced obviously even more pride than the people watching.
Yeah, so 2009 I played all 5 games in the Confederations Cup, and I thought I'm in with a good chance to start and to play in the 2010 World Cup. It was disappointing that I sat on the bench for all 3 games. But again, this is a lesson for all kids that in sport, a week can be a long time. A lot can happen in a week. So, we had a year to prepare for that World Cup. We spent almost 5 months out of the country. So we didn't, as a squad, as players, we weren't able to quite soak up the atmosphere and realize actually what it meant to the country and what was going on the ground. A couple of days before the Mexico game, a couple of us went on an open bus tour in Sandton. There were 200,000 people on the streets of Sandton wishing us well. I think only then did it really hit us. Wow, this is it. This is what it means. And yeah, I would have loved to have played or gotten a go. But there was a coaching change 6 months before. And I could tell that he wasn't, I wasn't his favorite. I tried my best to change his mind. Every single time I went on the training field, we spent a month in Brazil, a month in Germany, a couple of weeks in Durban preparing. So I had a lot of time to try and change his mind, but I wasn't able to do it. But we can certainly be proud as a nation, to have hosted one of the best World Cups ever. People still talk about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You say you obviously got 2 children. Do they play soccer? Are they as passionate as soccer as you are?
Yeah, so my eldest, who's 15, he's a good 400 and 800 meter runner. He also plays competitive football here on the West Rand. And my younger boy is 11. He's besotted with football. He talks about football non-stop. When it's time to do his homework, I've got to just set him down and realign him and just
that's what kids do.
Yeah, but no, they're both keen sportsmen. They play a bit of golf. I take them down to the driving range. So I try and give them a variety of sport, and we're very fortunate in South Africa that, well, coming from your old sort of Model C and private schools, that there's a wide range of sports on offer. So we're fortunate to be in that situation. But yeah, only 10% of government schools offer some form of sport, which is actually a very poor statistic.
Sad. Yeah. And do they go to private schools or government schools?
Private. Yeah.
Okay, so and at school, because most private schools in South Africa actually don't offer soccer. So then, do they play club?
Yeah. So this, my youngest one, the school does offer football.
Okay.
The eldest one, they've just started. When I grew up, I was always quite envious of the Joburg schools because generally they offered football. Down in the Cape, my school didn't offer it, so I had to get my football fix going to a club. And I'm glad that that's starting to change now due to popular demand. Yeah.
And that also obviously encourage, your upper class people to be able to be exposed to soccer and not get distracted as much, because now they can do it as a sport, and it doesn't have to be as a club when they go to the club after school sports. So you've obviously stayed in the soccer industry. You say you're working at SuperSport now as well. Yeah,
so I'm doing a bit of TV work, giving the makeup artists a lot of work, and I'm in the artificial grass industry. I'm on a couple of panels, the guys, South African Institute for Drug-Free Sport, the guys who test our athletes. So I'm on the rotating tribunal panel for the disciplinary committee. Also for the Premier Soccer League's disciplinary committee, I'm on the tribunal panel, which is a bit ironic because I used to be on the other side of the table quite often. And then myself and my wife, we run a MPO since 2009. It's football clinics and book clubs. That's all we tend to focus on. So we get a lot of ex-professionals involved and to come and help out and keep them busy, you know.
Where are these clinics? Where are the football clinics?
I'm inundated with requests from all over the country. So I've done clinics in Cape Town, as far as Impangeni, near Richards Bay. But most of them are based here in Gauteng. I mean, there's a huge demand.
Yeah, and do you do it in obviously the poorer demographics to obviously help and encourage them to realize their skills and work towards maybe becoming a professional, or just, you know, getting an outlet, and to obviously, I mean, the more active kids are, the less dangerous things that they'll be thinking about.
Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's what sport does.
Yeah.
Especially football, because it's so easy. I mean, kids can wrap a few checkers packers together and play football, you know. But yeah, you can imagine the social impact that this lockdown has had on kids like that.
Yeah.
You know, keeping them out of trouble and busy. But yeah, our business, our model is kind of we go to a private school which is paying, and that kind of subsidizes our next 2 or 3 events at perhaps communities or schools that can't afford it. Yeah. But the best thing about it is that we keep ex players busy. I mean, we not, as ex players, we're not reinvested into the football industry. A lot of us have 15, 20 years experience, and we're sitting at home doing nothing. You know, so the best part about it for me is to get those players involved, and the looks on the kids' faces, you know, when they see an ex-pro who's played for Kaizer Chiefs or Orlando Pirates and he's come to coach me, you know, it's great too.
In South Africa, it is difficult to make money actually in any sport. Maybe rugby is probably the best in South Africa. Personally, from you, in your advice, because I had a friend that actually went to go play professional soccer in Malta, and because obviously he couldn't see himself making it in South Africa. What advice would you give people in sport in general, wanting to obviously make it and make a career of it?
Yeah, so it is, you know, a lot of our good young talent are actually happy just to stay in South Africa and play. Because the money is pretty good. I mean, if you look at Kaizer Chiefs, Pirates, Mamelodi Sundowns, the top players are probably earning 250 to 300,000 rand a month.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
You know, but there is a wide range. I mean, if you're a youngster and you play for example, Bloemfontein Celtic or Golden Arrows, I mean, your starting package might be 10k. Okay. You know, so there's a wide range of salaries. So my advice is to take up the opportunity. It's a fantastic way to earn a living. Yeah. But always be mindful of the fact that you've only got 15 or 20 years to maximize your salary, and as soon as you've signed your first contract, start to save. You know, don't fall into the trap and that status of buying a Louis Vuitton or your fancy gear. Get your mum and dad a house. Get yourself a house. Don't buy too much of a fancy car. We all do stupid things with our first salary. Yeah. But as a football player, it's a very short-lived career. And educate yourself. Make sure you got a matric. Make use of institutions like UNISA, you know, to study while you are still playing. Yeah. So that when you retire, you have a smooth transition from retirement into whatever you want to do. Afterwards, you know. Well,
you yourself obviously have now a business of, you know, that artificial grass. Explain what do you do there, and where do you normally equip places with the grass?
Yeah, so we've got a very good reputation for supplying residences. For example, people spend a lot of money on watering their gardens. It's not really feasible in South Africa these days, or in Southern Africa. So often they'll replace it with artificial grass. No need to water it, very little maintenance. And we've done a number of these five-a-side fields and full-size fields as well. A private school that we did a full-size hockey field for, you know, their savings are 30 to 40,000 rand a month on water. Yeah. So in this day and age, in this climate, if you do have the money to do it, it's a fantastic option. And the best thing about it is that kids who are able to play on it, whether it's hockey, football, from a developmental point of view, you get a nice flat, smooth roll of the ball, so you can practice your technique with confidence. Facilities generally around South Africa are very poor, and it's very difficult to teach a kid proper technique in any ball sport.
And I think that's a massive thing in terms of the townships is, the uneven, the gravel grounds. And could you ever see, I think maybe not, but could you ever see the government spending money on putting in like AstroTurfs and those kind of things that don't need as much maintenance?
That would be the perfect scenario. We have too many schools to do it at every school, but certainly if you can create a hub and a sharing facility, so without any ego, and if it's managed properly, government would be able to do that. I think this new loan from the IMF, if they instituted something like that and it's transparent and people are held accountable to where the cash goes, the world is your oyster when it comes to sports development and what can be achieved, because you're able to do a multi-sports court, so you're able to facilitate and host a number of sports on that one facility. So that's a great idea.
You obviously working for SuperSport, and SuperSport does a lot of outreach as well. I've mainly seen the cricket outreach. Is there a lot of SuperSport outreach for soccer?
Goes without saying, they own a club up in Pretoria, which does a lot of work. They have the academies, which is a paying academy, and they are very fortunate in that regard because they kind of are able to find the cream of the crop within Gauteng. Their Let's Play program is fantastic. It's more of a holistic sports program. It doesn't really focus on one particular sport. They do a lot of CSI work, so hats off to them. And generally, football players and sports people have been fantastic during lockdown. I don't think athletes or ex-athletes have given enough credit for what they've done in their communities by helping the communities that they grew up in, and long may it last.
You will obviously continue to give back to the communities and continue to, do these outreach programs. Could you see yourself going into anything else that's obviously not soccer related? Obviously, the AstroTurf, the grass kind of is and isn't, but obviously, you obviously need to be more business orientated once you've retired from professional sport. Yeah,
I'm fairly fortunate that I've had a bit of a profile, to be able to give me these opportunities. I'm not a businessman. I have been responsible for huge amounts of money and having to invest it and that confidence. The risk puts me off.